I think we were all very conscious that a critical point had come in Mum's life and dying. Thinking that the nurses had finished getting Wendy ready, for her night's sleep, and for us to come back in the room and keep vigil over her, I popped my head round the door to see them. They were still changing Wendy, but this time they were changing the sheets, they were changing Wendy's nightie. And such a beautiful sight. One of the nurses was brushing Wendy's hair. I couldn't stay, of course, and I went away, but it was very evident that they were aware that something was special. We all three then went into the room, and Wendy's breathing was very, very shallow. The skin of her hands was mottled, extremely cold, but she looked serene, and it acquired a kind of inner beauty to me that I'll never ever forget. And we thought that this is it, and gradually that she would slowly decline. But then there's something incredible happened, and I know that this is very common as the last moments come, that there's a rallying, a surge of energy to the brain. Wendy held up her hand, raised her head, and opened her eyes. I know it was not any. I'm convinced it was no way religious, but it happened at a very special time in my own emotional state. And I took her in my arms, and I thanked her for coming back to us to say goodbye. Gradually, very quickly, her breath just stopped. And thereafter, apart from a few latent puffs, a few gentle puffs, the breath stopped, and she died. We closed our eyes and said a few words, and went out to the nurse station to tell them what had happened. They then explained what the procedure would be. The doctor would come round, possibly not that evening, possibly not even during the night, but maybe in the morning. And Wendy would stay where she was. And at that point, we should clear her belongings and our belongings out of the room. There was a surreal atmosphere about it. There is Wendy's body, still in the bed, still looking serene, and to me with no evidence or indication of her dementia, but only of the fact that she was, to us there, our beloved and loving wife and mother. I know it was at that point. It was it was her body, but I could not see her. I could not believe that she was still not Wendy at that point. I think that, you know, when I go to see her, possibly in the funeral home, I'll not see her as in quite the same way, but I was overwhelmed with the beauty of it, the beauty of not of the condition, not of the state, not of the circumstance, or the aesthetic aspects of the beauty, but that it was that Wendy there and us and the fact of this incredible, probably totally unscientific rally. It's totally unconscious rally on her part had occurred. I was overwhelmed then, and I'm overwhelmed now. But then somehow, with clearing of the clothes, thinking what arrangements we were going to make to where we were going to stay that night. In fact, we went back to Celia's for coffee, and then David came back to stay with me for the night. Both of us very incredibly upset. I mean, I cannot say. Driving home in the car, I gave way to tears, and to be honest, I wondered if I wanted to live anymore. I think, like all married couples, Wendy and I had our ups and downs. Nothing major. Neither of us had ever been unfaithful, if that's the appropriate word, to each other. And we'd grown comfortable with each other. We adored our children and our grandchildren. And as I say, I seriously wondered how I could carry on. David was clearly equally emotional, and I know he does in himself. He gets very emotional, but and he was clearly weeping and upset, and we both were. Before David went to bed more or less straight away. I cleared up a little bit my things and did a few minor little house chores, but I went into the bedroom and I was overcome by a rush of tears and crying. I can't believe how I poured it. That itself was curious, because I was conscious that I wanted it to happen, and I was kind of making it happen. So it wasn't entirely spontaneous, but it happened nonetheless, and I felt it, and I still feel it now. Got the official duties to carry out tomorrow. I went to see Celia, and we watched a bit of football, and I joked a little bit with her boys. But as I left, I said that I would, sort out what needed to be done, and perhaps do a tentative allocation of tasks for David and Celia, which they both wanted to do, after having gone to the bereavement office the following day. But as I was doing it, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about my last view of Wendy, my feelings of love for her, again, I became somewhat tearful and inarticulate. And that brings me up to the present.